I want to give all praise and glory to Yahweh. I want to give all praise and glory to Yahweh Bahasham, Yahweh Shai Bahasham Ha Rakah Kwadash. Double honors unto our apostle elders, which rule great millstone well, and shalom to the hopeful elect of the nation of Israel. May you endure unto the end. Shalom wa abababal. All right, so let's start in Psalm 2. Verse 10, it says, Be wise now, therefore, O ye kings, be instructed, ye judges of the earth. Talking about the Israelite men. We've been scattered throughout the world in slavery. We are exiled from our land, but soon we will return when Yahweh sends his son Yahweh Shai back. Yahweh Shai will deliver a remnant of Israelites to the promised land and change their bodies to where they do not sin, which I hope to be in that number. It says in verse 11, Serve Yahweh with fear and rejoice with trembling. So give Yahweh the supreme being his reverence. Almighty Yahweh has given the Israelites salvation through his son Yahweh Shai. Verse 12, Kiss the Son, acknowledge Yahweh Shai as your Savior. Salvation is only for the Israelites. Israelites are going to be scattered amongst all the nations, even looking like the heathen, but they have faith. All right. But through the prophecies, we have a sure word of prophecy, and we know where the foundation of the 12 tribes are, and it's here in the Western Hemisphere. North America, Central America, South America, and the Caribbeans, the so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native American Indians, which have been scattered throughout the world in slavery. All right. It says, Kiss the Son, lest he be angry, and ye perish from the way, when his wrath is kindled but a little. Blessed are all they that put their trust in him. And blessed is we're going to receive the heathen as our slaves. All right, we're going to get the kingdom, which will be here on earth. The Lord's going to put us back in the land. Isaiah 14:1, For Yahweh will have mercy on Jacob and will yet choose Israel. Once again, according to biblical prophecy, the Israelites are the so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native American Indians, which have been scattered throughout the world in slavery. It says, and set them in their own land. Our own land is the promised land. Right now you have counterfeits in that land, the land of Israel. And the strangers shall be joined with them, which these are Israelites, and they're being joined to us through the internet. They watch our videos and they're converted because they're Israelites and they believe, they have faith. They're ordained to be saved. Faith is a gift. All right, and our faith is to hope in the word of Yahweh, which speaks of his son Yahweh Shai. But the enemy, the so-called white race, the red devil the Bible speaks of, Esau Edom, put their image in place of the true Messiah. All right, they put up a false name, that false name being Jesus Christ. All right, they covered the faces of the judges thereof. All right, the wicked rule the world. The so-called white race are that wicked people. All right, this is not biblical. This is a false image, and the name Jesus is false. All right. As it is written in the Holy Scriptures, speaking of Yahweh Shai, is what you see illustrated, all right, in the Bible verses that enforce it, which there's more than just these two when you read the whole roll. All right, there's much evidence of who the Israelites were, what they looked like, and who they worshiped. All right. The 12 tribes of Israel, which have been scattered throughout the world in slavery. Judah, the so-called American Negro. Benjamin, the so-called West Indian. Levi, the so-called Haitian. These make up the southern kingdom. The kingdom of Israel was divided after the death of King Solomon. It says, the northern kingdom, Levi, the so-called Dominican, Zebulun, the so-called Guatemalans to the so-called Panamanians, Ephraim, the so-called Puerto Ricans, Manasseh, the so-called Cubans, Gad, the so-called North American Indians, Reuben, the so-called Seminole Indians, Naphtali, the so-called Argentinians, to the so-called Chileans, Asher, the so-called Colombians, to the so-called Uruguayans, Issachar are the so-called Mexicans. These are the 12 tribes of Israel, according to prophecy. But once again, we've been scattered throughout the world in slavery, and we've been allowed to take on the heathens' women, so our children looking like the other nations. All right. So it's according to faith in Yahweh Shai, as it is written in the Holy Scriptures, which is the word of Yahweh, and we understand this by the Holy Spirit. All right. So it says, and the strangers shall be joined with them by the unicorn, they're cleaving unto Yahweh Bahasham, Yahweh Shai through the prophets, and they shall cleave to the house of Jacob. Right? You start being converted. All right, you leaving the way of darkness under the heathen and coming into the light. Yahweh Bahasham, Yahweh Shai is the light, the truth, the way, and life. All right, and the people shall bring them and bring them. And the people shall take them and bring them to their place. This is talking about the other nations. When we get our new bodies and we're put in that land. All right, we're going to be as gods on earth, and we're going to enslave the other nations. It says, and the house of Israel shall possess them in the land of Yahweh for servants and handmaids. They're going to be our slaves. And they shall take them captives, whose captives they were, and they shall rule over their oppressors. All right, the heathen. Now I'm going to go to Micah chapter 5, and I'm going to read it in the NLT. All right, it's a prophecy of Yahweh Shai. All right, it says in Malachi 5 verse 1, it says, mobilize, marshal your troops. The enemy is laying siege to Jerusalem. They will strike Israel's leaders in the face with a rod. But you, O Bethlehem, Ephrathah, let's see if I get it read aloud. Ephrathah are only a small village among all the people of Judah, all right, which Yahweh Shai was born in Bethlehem. Yet a ruler of Israel will come from you, one whose origins are from the distant past, which this is the Messiah, which he was Adam, he was Isaac, he was high priest Melchizedek, he was he came as Yahweh Shai, also King Solomon. All right, so one whose origins are from a distant past. The first verse speaks of Yahweh Shai. In the beginning, God, that word God there is plural for gods, Elohim. And the one that led the Elohim, that created the Elohim, was Yahweh's son, Yahweh Shai. He was the first. Yahweh created Yahweh Shai, and Yahweh Shai created everything else. The people of Israel will be abandoned to their enemies until the woman in labor gives birth, which birth to the Messiah, Yahweh Shai. Yahweh Shai came out of the nation of Israel. Until the woman in labor gives birth, then at last his fellow countrymen, Israelites, will return from exile to their own land. So we're at the end of this captivity. Yahweh Shai was born of woman on earth, his father being Joseph in Bethlehem, of the tribe of Judah, of the lineage of King David, as it was prophesied. All right, he was crucified, died, and resurrected by Yahweh, which he sits at the right hand of the Father today. Soon, Yahweh will give him the commandment to come to earth from heaven and deliver the anointed, the elect, them Alahim that were in the beginning with him. It says in Micah 5, verse 4, and he will stand to lead his flock with the Lord Yahweh's strength in the majesty of the name of Yahweh, his power, which were adopted in through Yahweh Shai, and only the Israelites have this right. Then his people will live there undisturbed, meaning in the promised land. When we were in the promised land, the heathen were always fucking with us ever since our forefathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. All right. But when we go back into that land, we're going to put them in slavery. All right. And then eventually, after that 1,000 years of slavery, the so-called white man, Esau, Edom, the wicked that rule the world today, they're going to be made extinct because there ain't going to be no use for them. All right. They're a weapon of mass destruction. And we're going to have peace. So there's no place for them. All right. And it's been already in the scripture, it's been prophesied that this is his lot. It's really according to the will of the Lord that everything that happens on earth. All right. It says, then his people will live there in the promised land undisturbed, for he will be highly honored around the world. How is he going to be highly honored throughout the world? Because his elect are laying it down, enforcing it on these other nations, that there is no other God but Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai. And they're going to serve the Israelites, all right, 1,000 years in slavery, then tributaries for the rest of existence. It says, and he will be the source of peace, Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai. When the Assyrians invade our land and break through our defenses, we will appoint 7 rulers to watch over us, 8 princes to lead us. They will rule Assyria with drawn swords and enter the gates of the land of Nimrod. He will rescue us from the Assyrians when they pour over the borders to invade our land. Right, which you had in the history, the Israelites were taken into captivity by the Assyrian Babylonian kingdom, starting with the northern kingdom, which eventually they came on Assyrian ships to the western hemisphere of the world, which you have North America, Central America, South America, and the Caribbeans. And then the southern kingdom went in to the Assyrian Babylonian captivity 100 years later or more, and they eventually were allowed to go back into the land under Darius, the king of the Medes, and Xerxes, the king of the Persians. They were allowed to go back, starting with Zerubbabel, Nehemiah, and Ezra, to go back into that land and rebuild. And then the Greeks and the Romans. All right. So the Lord allowed this history to play out as it was written. All right. But it's a sure word of also prophecy of what's going to come to pass. It says in verse 7, then the remnant left in Israel, and the Romans, they destroyed our city in 70 AD with the tribes there, Judah, Benjamin, and Levi, the northern kingdom already over here in what you know as the Americas. And when they were sieged in 70 AD, all right, the Israelites that fled, all right, they went into West Africa, they went into Europe, they went into what you know as Russia, all right, and they were running from the so-called white race, the Red Devil back then, which were known as Romans, and before that, Greeks. They had many names of blasphemy, all right, they call themselves white, which they are not, they're red. They're the Red Devil the Bible speaks of. They try to say that they're Christians, but they're the devil the Bible speaks of. It says, verse 7, then the remnant left in Israel will take their place among the nations. They will be like dew sent by Yahweh are like rain falling on the grass, which the rain covers all the grass. So we're going to control all the nations, all the resources, all the land, which no one could hold back and no one can restrain. So these heathen are just mortal men, and we're going to be like gods. All right. So they're not going to be able to resist us. They're not going to be able to fight us. They're not going to be able to compete with us. They're not going to be able to overcome us. They're not going to be able to deceive us. The remnant left in Israel will take their place among the nations. They will be like a lion among the animals of the forest, will be the king of the jungle. It tells you in Genesis 49 that the prey has went up. Let me get it. Let me say it correctly. Genesis 49, talking about Judah. This is a prophecy of the last days for the sons of Israel. All right. And I'm going to go to Judah. Verse 9, Judah is a lion's whelp, like a lion cub. In this generation, they become weak. From the prey, the so-called white man, which is weaker than you run from. My son, thou art gone up. He stooped down and couched as a lion, which you went from slavery to employment. Now you're comfortable because you got a job. And as an old lion, who shall rouse him up? But that's why the Lord has this so-called white man taking away your jobs, taking away your rights, your civil rights, taking away your people. Eventually, you're going to be gathered into FEMA camps. All right. All these Israelites that are unbelieving, they're going to be destroyed in their unfaithfulness, right? Because we're supposed to be faithful. We're the faithful people of Israel, which we believe in Yahweh Ba'asham Yahushai, which even Xerxes said this. Let's get it. (16). All right, verse 1, it says, the great king Artaxerxes, also known as Xerxes, unto the princes and governors of 107 and 20 provinces, which was a huge kingdom, bigger than America's kingdom, from India unto Ethiopia, and unto all our faithful subjects greeting. Now I'm going to just jump down to the point, but he's writing about Haman being destroyed for trying to destroy the Israelites. All right. But it tells you right here. It says in Editions of Esther, and I believe it was chapter 16, verse 14, for by these means he thought, talking about Haman, the Edomite, finding us destitute of friends, to have translated the kingdom of the Persians to the Macedonians, which eventually out of Macedon you had the Greek Alexander, the so-called great. But we find that the Jews whom this wicked wretch had delivered to utter destruction are no evildoers, but live by the most just laws, and that they be sons of the Most High, which his name is Yahweh, and most mighty, living power, who hath ordered the kingdom both unto us and to our progenitors in the most excellent manner, which you could read about Nebuchadnezzar, a great king, talking about our power and how he's with us in the book of Daniel, chapter 4. All right. So the whole earth is going to know that the Lord is with us. All right. And there ain't going to be nothing they could do against us, because they're mortal and we are as gods, all right, on earth. So I'm going to read it in KJV, Micah 5, verse 8. And the remnant of Jacob, which are going to be saved, shall be among the Gentiles in the midst of many people as a lion among the beasts, which they're going to be hiding in their bunkers, and we're going to get them out, and we're going to breed them into slavery. They're going to be bred like a mule for work, all right, or a donkey, right? But we're not going to be crossbreeding nothing, it's just going to be pure. Everything's going to be pure under us, all right? The heathen are the heathen, and they're each going to have their lot of land, and they're going to dwell there, but their service is to us as we serve Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai. In the midst of many people, as a lion among the beasts of the forest, as a young lion among the flocks of sheep, who, if he go through, both treadeth down and teareth in pieces, and none can deliver. No one will, not Yahweh, not Yahweh Shai, will stop us. This is our, as they say on this earth, God-given right. The heathen are nothing. 2nd Ezra 6, Isaiah 40. All right? The heathen are nothing. The Lord's going to give us the power to tread these heathen down like a lion tearing his prey apart. Verse 9, thine hand shall be lifted up upon thine adversaries, starting with that so-called white race, and all thine enemies shall be cut off, which you're not going to have no power over us. All right, right now you might be able to kick in a door and beat the shit out of Jake, even put him to death, right? Throw him in a jail cell, take away his rights, take away his family, take away his money, whatever, right? But in that day when we get that power, you're going to be the prey and we're going to be the predator. All right? It says, and it shall come to pass in that day, saith Yahweh, that I will cut off thy horses out of the midst of thee, and I will destroy thy chariots, which he's going to go to war with these heathen, all right? And he's going to enslave them under us. And I will cut off the cities of thy land and throw down all thy strongholds. That's why the nuclear destruction, all right? The nuclear destruction is going to shake this earth, and it's going to be as these heathen have never been, because we're going to put them in slavery, and they're going to build up our kingdom, and America, Babylon the Great, is going to be a desert forever in the memorial of what happens to the ungodly. It says, and I will cut off witchcraft out of thine hand, and thou shalt have no more soothsayers, these false prophets, false religions, false doctrines. Thy graven images also will I cut off, and thy standing images out of the midst of thee. And thou shalt no more worship the work of thine hands, because you're going to worship Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai by worshiping the Israelites. And I will pluck up thy groves out of the midst of thee, which he's going to do through the nuclear destruction, through the chariot fire. So will I destroy thy cities. And then when the elect come down, right, we're going to go through the people. And like Yahweh Shai said, bring him here and slay him before me, any that does not want to worship. All right, because you're going to have survivors hiding in the holes and in the caves and in bunkers. And some will be Israelites on other parts of the earth. And we're going to go through, grab the heathen, and slave them. The Israelite, if he wasn't destroyed, hey, this is what it is. Put him to death if you don't want to serve the Lord. All right? That's how it's going to be, because the elect are going to be like gods. All right? They're the top of the mountain with Yahweh Shai. We're going to be like him. The other Israelites, they're gonna receive also new bodies, but through the elect. All right? But those that are alive, once again, when we come across them, which the Lord will be able to change them if he preserves them, or have us destroy them. Once again, he's going to give us the ability to judge. It says in verse 15, and we're judging the nation of Edom right now. We're condemning it by telling the truth. And I will execute vengeance and anger and fury upon all the heathen, right? Upon the heathen, but it's all the heathen, such as they have not heard, right? It's going to be more worse for you than it was for us because it's payback. Obadiah, verse 15, it says, for the day of Yahweh is near upon all the heathen, all the heathen, all the heathen. As thou hast done, it shall be done unto thee. Thy reward shall return upon thine own head. There is no salvation for the heathen. For as ye have drunk upon my holy mountain, you're all partaking in our slavery. Your confederate, the UN, which is under the so-called white race rulership, so shall all the heathen drink continually. Yea, they shall drink and they shall swallow down, and they shall be as though they had not been. See, they're going to be fucked up, man. For 1,000 years, re-education, and we're going to rule with an iron fist. All right? It says, but upon Mount Zion shall be deliverance, the Israelites, the elect, the 144,000 elect, which the Israelites are going to cleave to through the unicorn, the internet, by the Holy Spirit, because we're going to be that light that shares the light for you to be able to follow Yahweh Ba'Hashem Yahushai. All right? But upon Mount Zion shall be deliverance, and there shall be holiness, and the house of Jacob shall possess their possessions, and the house of Joseph and the house of Jacob shall be a fire, and the house of Joseph a flame, which we're going to be like lions amongst these prey, and the house of Esau for stubble, and they shall kindle in them and devour them, and there shall not be any remaining of the house of Esau, for Yahweh has spoken it. They're going to be made extinct. All right, that's their lot. But we're going to get the heathen as our slaves, and we're going to be in our land, and ain't nobody going to disturb us. Nobody's going to come in and say, stop, you're going to kill him. You know, if we chose, if that's our judgment upon that heathen, then he's gonna die. All right, but hey, they show you in the slave movies, there was times where Jake got beat damn near to death, and he had to go back to work. And don't let me hear you complain about it. See, so we're gonna do as they done unto us. All right, and this is why these devils, the so-called white men in these other nations, right? They're coming down with great wrath because they know that they have but a short time before they go into slavery and suffer something greater than what they done unto us. Shalom to the elect of the nation of Israel. Wa abal babal.